All right. Well, hello and welcome everyone to our VantagePoint live analysis here using our VantagePoint AI trading software. So excited to dive into some just really important topics today regarding market diversification and risk management as well. Those are two very important concepts that really do go hand in hand. And VantagePoint is really designed to help traders of all different styles with that. Of course, VantagePoint is designed for a swing style of trading. So throughout our education today, we are going to focus on diversification, specifically related to that, but that could be shorter term swings lasting anywhere from a day to a couple of days on into potentially even more longer term holds or position trading as well, from weeks to months and possibly even longer, just depending upon your trading style. I think what you'll find today is that VantagePoint can be very versatile depending upon the type of trader you are, to help you with risk assessment, management, and just overall diversification in the markets to really make sure that you're positioned on the right side of the markets, whatever the conditions might be. So we're going to get to the software in just a minute, but before we do that, if you could just do me a big favor, let me know if you can, one, hear me loud and clear. It looks like we're good to go, but always like to double check that. And then also, please let me know if you're joining us for the first time or if this is the very first time that you're seeing VantagePoint. So if you're not a VantagePoint family member yet, just let me know down in the chat so I know who's on the other end of our communication here today. And speaking of communication, just keep those chats going throughout the session today. That's what really makes these sessions what they are, is your communication with me. So part of education is asking questions and making sure that those get answered. So of course, ask questions during the session as well, and we'll dive into as much live analysis as we possibly can. So let me just go ahead and check the chat here for a moment, and we're going to go ahead and dive on in. All right, perfect. It looks like we are good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and transition on over into our VantagePoint software, and let's start with just a couple of just basic assessments here when it comes to really understanding why it's so important to have diversification. So I'll start with the SPY. This is the ETF that's going to cover the major indice, the S&P 500. And I'm going to simplify, of course, in VantagePoint, as I mentioned, we do have several indicators that you can, choose to add on, but let's just start with the basics here. So I'm actually going to just pull this on down for those of you who are not familiar with VantagePoint. We are going to do a full run through just to make sure that, well, everybody is on the same page moving forward through this training session. So it looks like we do have a few new attendees here today to our live session who are maybe just seeing VantagePoint for the first time, and of course a few of you VantagePoint family members who are very familiar with the software already. So I'll rely on you guys to ask some really good questions and really keep this engaging as we go through as well. So let's start with just our simplest setup here in VantagePoint, and the simplest is going to be our default, which is going to be the medium term crossover. All right, so before we kind of dive into any details, let me just start by saying green means up and red means down typically in VantagePoint. All right, so now that you're in the VantagePoint world, welcome. For those of you who, again, might be using VantagePoint or might just be seeing this for the first time, it's designed to be very simple for, really traders who are just starting out or very experienced traders. So, just watch and learn, and I'm sure you'll take away a few things from today's session. So very excited to dive on in. So let's begin. The first thing that we talked about was that concept of red and green, right? So if we can see here, we do have our SPY, and we can see that back here again for that swing style of trading, we can see we did have a crossover on the SPY. Now, when I say a crossover, that's a crossover from red to green. And that means we're coming out of that bearishness and potentially coming into that bullishness here. Now, when you see that blue line crossing above and that green trend starting to take place, that's a signal for potential entry or continuation of a trend. Now you can see that happen back here as well. So there's some position management to this as well, and that's okay. As long as that trend remains green, you have confidence, right? When things start to turn red, you may want to, again, assess from a risk management standpoint. And don't worry, we're going to get into that into detail here a little later in our session. But just to get everybody on the same page here, when we're looking for that crossover, as well as that green neural index down here at the bottom. Now that neural index is a 2-day predictor of price action. So that's going to help us better see whether or not we are expected to continue trending up from a price standpoint over the next 1 and 2 days. Of course, trend confirmation with price gives you a lot of confidence, but we're not quite done there yet. We're going to come down to what we would call our predictive differences. And what you need to remember about these are simply measures of strength within the forecast. And so if we take a look here at our predictive differences, you can see that these predictive differences are in fact coming up at that exact same time frame. And so with strength coupled with the price action expected to be bullish, and then again with that trend crossover for our timing, we can have a lot of confidence in the movement of that trend expectation. And lo and behold, here we have that movement. Now, I'm going to go back to what I said in the very beginning of this session just a few moments ago. I said VantagePoint is very customizable. All right, so you might be a trader who wants to catch a swing earlier, and that's okay. That's your trade style. We encourage that. We want you to know who you are as a trader, because we want to make sure that the software is working for you and not the other way around. And so what we can do is just switch the time frames. It's as easy as 2 clicks. So our 2 clicks are going to go up to this view drop down right here at the top. And from here, we'll in fact just switch to our short-term crossover. No surprise there, if you're a shorter-term trader or want those entry points earlier, we'd look at the short-term, more sensitive indication, which I'll switch on over to that short-term crossover. And here you can see we did have an earlier identification. Now let's go check those other points of confirmation that we discussed earlier. So here's our first point where we have that green trend occurring. Then is our neural index green? And yes, we can see that's green as well. And then of course our predictive differences are also trending up in this case as well, giving us nice confidence of that potential for the bullish trend to resume. And I say resume because of course we did have a bit of a pullback here. All right, and this is a great way to really avoid getting stopped out or scared during these, situations where we might see a little bit of weakness in the markets, because the markets aren't all strong or all weak all at the same time. They like to, fake traders out, and that's just the very nature of trading. That's why it's important to understand that there's always risk in the market. And even during our training session today, remember, I'm not a licensed advisor, so I'm here to help you better understand how to use technical indicators to help give you more confidence, and more specifically, use artificial intelligence, incorporate that with the technical indicators, so you've got a lot of confidence to make a very well-informed trade decision, and a strategic one at that, prior to the market movement. So you're no longer waiting on the markets. You can make those decisions ahead of time and be prepared. So as we see, what is happening current day in our market conditions that we're looking at now. And I say market conditions because we are looking at a broader market here. The SPY is an ETF that follows the S&P 500. And so looking at this broader market, we can see that there is some weakness. Now, why do I say that? Well, that's not just me saying it because I think that there's weakness. That's an assessment from the predictive artificial intelligence here. And in fact, we got a crossover here on the 18th, indicating that we may see some substantial weakness happening here. Again, along with that neural index, this works just as well to the downside as it does to the upside. And that's very important because you need to know when you should also have more caution in the markets as well. I can't tell you how many times from traders I've heard lately that, boy, oh boy, things are looking like they're at a top, or when is things going to turn around? Well, use the artificial intelligence. Don't wait on the markets. until after it's already happened, then it's too late. So here we can see the 18th, we did have that cross to the downside along with that neural index, and then all three of our strength indicators, those predictive differences trending down as well, giving us a heads up that, hey, there is something shifting here, so you may want to be very cautious. And again, that's that shorter term indication, but oftentimes this is going to be a red flag that signals you as the trader that you should have some risk management strategies in place. So if you didn't already, now you know that when you see that red crossover with confirmation, you certainly want to be ready for what the markets may bring. All right. Now, that doesn't mean be scared, because we don't need to be scared. You have the artificial intelligence guiding you. You already know what's around the next blind corner. So let's go ahead and pull up a couple of additional markets here. Let me just take a quick look at the chat. I always just like to make sure that we're checking through here, see if you guys have any questions. All right. So I haven't touched on the support and resistance yet. That is the red and green arrows that you do see on the chart. And you'll find some of the indicators in VantagePoint are optional. This is an optional indicator. But the support and resistance is very important from a conceptual standpoint. Let me ask, who is very familiar, or who's just familiar in general with support and resistance? Answer that in the chat for me, and we can take a little deeper dive, because this is also a part of risk management, which is why I have this on our chart. So we're going to save this as our kind of default setup for the charts, looking for those earlier shifts in the trend to start. And I'm going to walk you through how to really view the progression of these moves in the markets using the predictive analysis and predictive artificial intelligence. All right, perfect. Thumbs up. I like it. Thanks, Mike. All right. Let's see. So you can, if you are familiar with VantagePoint, you can add these support and resistance indicators from your indicator, your master indicator panel over here on the side. We have plenty of, indicators that you can add on to your chart. But the support and resistance here is going to be verified support and resistance. So resistance arrow is going to be denoted by that red arrow pointing down. Now, I personally love the arrows. You can change the point style in VantagePoint too for your own preferences. But speaking just a little bit more on that support and resistance, because we had a couple of questions here, you can shift this to an arrow or a point style. I like the arrow because it shows you really the direction of impact that resistance is likely to have on your asset that's pulled up. And of course, support is going to push up, so that's a green arrow pushing up. So resistance is in red. All right, that's our red arrow here, and that's going to have a downward pressure on price, and support is going to be green, and that's going to have an upward pressure on price. You can think of resistance as a ceiling and support as the floor, and you can see these provide these critical pivot points for a trade or for a trend specifically, and also help to really better assess potential entry as well as profit targets. Who's setting profit targets within their strategies? I'd love to know, because that's a concept that some traders do, some traders don't. Some traders don't even understand the importance of setting a profit target. So let me know again down in the chat so we can talk about support and resistance in relation to those profit targets as well. All right. Perfect. Joanne, no, that is not an RSI. We do have a predictive RSI indicator here in VantagePoint as well, but that's actually a neural, that's a piece of the neural index itself. So that's the neural strength index that you can layer on into your software and add on to the neural index itself. They work really great in tandem with each other. So I do have that pulled up as well, just as another momentum of strength indicator, for price action specifically. So thank you for all the questions. Just trying to make sure I covered everything. Profit target question mark. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk about profit targets. Profit targets are so important, and let's in fact pull up maybe some other assets as well. Does anybody have a few ticker symbols you guys want to take a look at together and we can analyze? Now, I know today's about diversification, so wanted to talk about the broader markets when things are looking choppy. or a little bit more volatile, how can you diversify? And one way to do that, as I wait for some of those ticker symbols, I do want to show you that VantagePoint, in fact, forecasts for many, many, many different asset classes. So we not only have individual US stocks, but we also forecast for Forex. We have just a plethora of ETF categories that we forecast for as well. You can see under the ETFs, you can open up these subcategories and really see that there is a full host and list of assets underneath each of these categories. So whether you're looking for REITs and real estate, or maybe you're healthcare and biotech focused, maybe you want to dabble in commodities but you've never traded in futures markets, ETFs are a great way to do that. So we'll dive in to some of that here momentarily. All right, thank you guys for some of those ticker symbols. I'll start pulling some of those up. But diversification doesn't only happen within the sectors of the individual stocks. That is one way to diversify, right? So, maybe you had been pretty heavy in tech recently. Can I get a hand raise for anybody who was heavy in tech recently? Let me know in the chat, because we'll talk about, other ways to look at the market from a diversification standpoint as well. All right, I got Uber, Monster, and PANW. So we'll start with that. I'll ask for some more ticker symbols in a little bit, but we'll start here for you guys as well. I said Monster. I'm sorry. I always get those two confused because the ticker symbols are so familiar. But MicroStrategies. All right, MSTR. I knew that one, guys. All right. It's towards the end of the day, right? All right. Perfect. So let's take a look at Uber here. We've got Uber pulled up. So everybody tell me where we see that crossover, right? We see that crossover right here. Now, careful because we do have earnings. Now you'll see a little earnings flag here. That's what that dollar sign is. All right. And VantagePoint does have, again, those additional indicators depending upon your strategies and what type of style you use. If you are someone who likes to make sure that you're not trading around earnings, or maybe you like earnings plays, well, then here's an earnings flag that'll actually notify you in advance that earnings is coming up so you can prepare for that strategically. Now, of course, we do see that we have a crossover after earnings. And in fact, if we switch to the shorter term crossover, and again, I like to see the progression. So I like to see, okay, when did we start this initial trend and then moving forward? Because as the trend gets stronger, you're going to see the additional, more conservative crossovers occur. That's a great way to manage positions and also manage risk. Now, circling back to our topic for today is that risk management. So if you are a little higher risk trader and you like to get into things earlier, the short-term crossover may be something that you start with. Now, negating earnings at this point, right, just solely talking about the crossovers here. But when you see a shorter-term crossover, we know that's an earlier signal, and earlier trends tend to be a little bit more finicky, right? So or more sensitive, I should say. So you certainly want to make sure that you're managing that risk going into that trend. Maybe you set a tight stop loss. Maybe you're taking a smaller position. All of those are, and there's various different risk management strategies that you can employ there. Those are just a couple of examples. So as we see, we have that crossover again with confirmation. That confirmation is key because that's what gives you the confidence as an informed trader to make a trade decision. Now, at this point, at the crossover, I'm going to pull in our analysis from resistance as well. So everybody sees this resistance level that actually occurred several weeks prior. Let's just check that date here really quickly. We can see that that's on 7/24. Just put my crosshairs right on that date and it'll tell me the exact date that occurred. So we know that we have resistance now from 7/24, and this could impact price as we approach that resistance level. Where is our current potential entry for this trend? Again, hypothetically speaking, because we are looking back here, but using and knowing how to use these indicators looking backwards will help you have more confidence in them moving forwards. But also just taking these concepts outside of VantagePoint. When you are trading, are you trading up against a resistance level, or are you looking for a potential trend that has a little bit of room to run, or a little bit of runway, if you will, before it smacks into a brick wall of resistance. And that's what resistance can do. Now, it doesn't always do that, but oftentimes it will cause price to sort of stall. And that's exactly what we see here. So if you are a shorter term trader, then maybe you set that resistance as your profit target. I'm going to turn off my tooltips. That's just an additional pop-up window that will give you more information on that day. So I just turned those off really quickly so it stopped getting in our way of the candle so we can evaluate price together. So as we can see here, let's go back to our initial crossover with our confirmation, right? And then moving on down to that medium term crossover. Again, the short term looks out one day. It's a very sensitive crossover, so that's going to help you with those shorter term or earlier entries. The medium term's a bit more conservative, looking out 2 days. So that's 2 days in the future, guys, not 2 days back. That's 2 days forward for that trend expectation. And so once you get that confirmed crossover from the medium term cross, then maybe you're adding to that position. Maybe you're staying in that position a little longer. You're going to manage that how you see fit. But if you don't know what to do once you start to see a trend strengthening, if you find yourself asking those questions and kind of nail biting, what do you do here? Think about risk management. Think about position management. You may need to define that within your own trade strategy. And again, that's outside of VantagePoint. Just from a strategic setup, you need to know what your objective is, right? What are your goals? And guess what? Profit targets should be part of that goal as well. Now, if it supersedes your profit target, great, right? It did better than expected. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that, right? But if it hits that profit target and goes beyond, then you should probably manage it more closely from there, and make sure that you've adjusted your strategy for that continued expectation as well. So I think that's kind of beating up Uber here. Let's take a look and see where Uber is at current day. So we do see that crossover. Now, from that position management standpoint, we can see that medium term crossover has stayed green the entire time. So yes, we hit a little bit of resistance, a little bit of bumpy road. And maybe if you are short term, you hit that profit target and say, you know what, I'm going to get out, I'm going to take my profits, kind of make that cash register ring, if you will, and then maybe find another opportunity or wait for that opportunity to pull back, right? And then re-enter on a new position as long as we still have those points of confirmation. So we actually get that here on the next day, continuing to trend upwards and now hitting that resistance level. Anybody notice what's happening with price here up against that resistance level? Would everybody say that price is being impacted by that resistance level? I would say so, right? Now, resistance can also be found at all-time highs. That's what we're hitting in the markets right now, right? So we are having a little bit of trouble breaking through those all-time highs. We've had a little bit of pushback as we've reached all-time highs. And it's important to understand those market conditions are going to impact the broader markets. And that's really what should be signaling your need for additional risk management or potentially even diversification during more volatile times. So, you could also look at the dollar. You could look at any of the Forex or foreign exchange markets, or you could, again, look at some of those ETFs as well. So let's go over to micro strategies and take a look and see what's happening with micro strategies. Anybody, I'm just looking in the chat here for a second. I had some questions come up. All right. And if anybody needs more information, don't forget to go to that VantagePointForecast.com. We'll always strive to answer as many questions as we can. If you need more information on VantagePoint or just some help, then just go to that VantagePointForecast.com. We've got lots of great information over there for you as well. So as we take a look at micro strategies, we can see that we switched over from a bullish trend to a bearish trend here on 8/13. All right. And that was a shorter term move. Now I am going to jump all the way back because did anyone get caught up in this just downslide? I don't want to call it a landslide. I don't want to beat anybody up too bad today, but if you found yourself caught in this move, no shame. This is all about learning and education And if you did, let me know, because this is something that you may want to avoid moving forward, and you don't know how to avoid it if you don't learn from it, right? So make it about the lesson and not the loss, and learn something from it moving forward so it doesn't happen again. Or at least you minimize the risk of that happening again. Again, no guarantees in the market. But as we see, we can clearly see MicroStrategy was in a bullish trend. We've got that crossover here. It remains green the entire time. You can switch this on over from the short to the medium term. You're going to see that bullish crossover right here with full confirmation from our other indicators here. And let's just walk through this shift that occurred. Bullish crossover here, bullish neural index, which means price expectancy, expected to go up. And then, of course, our strength is nice and strong, giving us full confidence that we are entering into a potentially strong bullish trend here. And lo and behold, guess what? VantagePoint got it right. And as long as that blue line stays above the black, continues to trend up. Now we start to see some weakness right here as we hit that resistance level. Now, this resistance level, right, is putting some downward pressure on price. So what happens is our moving average, our predictive moving average, starts to showcase that a little bit earlier. You can see that the predictive moving average is moving down while the actual moving average, that black line, that's a lagging indicator, that black line. All right, it only uses past price action, whereas the blue line is using predictive price action. Here's the real power showcased here in VantagePoint, because this moving average is actually still going up. That's telling you, hey, we're still in a bullish trend, whereas VantagePoint says, we're not so sure about that, right? VantagePoint's forecast is actually starting to lose significant strength here already. And you couple that up with the neural index, even though we don't have that crossover yet, we do now have that short-term crossover. So at that point, you can see from a risk management strategy, you're at a crossroads. Do you stay? Do you go? Do you take profits? Do you put in tighter stops? And we can see we had that crossover occur on the short term, along with that full confirmation from our other indicators of price and strength as well, all moving to the downside. So if you have things flipping topsy-turvy on you, then you know that there's some serious decisions that need to be made there as a swing trader, whether short term or longer term. And so as that occurs, maybe you got out, maybe you put in a stop, hopefully one of the two, so you didn't have to ride this all the way down. Or maybe you like to trade options and you think, wow, this is another great opportunity for a short position, right? So maybe you actually shifted strategies at this point because you saw the shift in market conditions and you were able to see that ahead of time and strategize, and boom, you could make profits to the downside as well. Until when? Until we run into some headwinds or some support down at the bottom that says, hang on, let's see if this price is going to be able to go any lower. And we see that we did have a little bit of volatility right here as we approached that support, but we eventually did break through. Well, if you took profits before that support level, even if you were at a short position, hopefully you placed your strikes strategically and were able to get some good profits. Maybe you exercise that option early and minimize the impact of time decay there. But either way, we had a really nice bearish move to the downside there, from resistance on down to support. Now, the reason I pointed out that support level is because guess what? We saw that support happen previously way back beginning of July. And so you would already at this point have had that potential profit target right here, hopefully as a short-term objective, right, for your trade plan. Setting goals, setting objectives, that's really what a trade plan is all about. Setting a goal, and then the plan is how you're going to get there, right? But we have to know that first. All right. Perfect. Yes, and of course, we're going to put in some more information into the chat. So check that for additional information and contact info if you do need some questions after the chat if we don't get a chance to answer those. There's lots of things you can do from your toolbar as well as your indicator panel as well for all of my VantagePoint family members out there. Your indicator panel is going to be just over on the right-hand side. And then, of course, all of your markets are going to be found over on the left. So markets on the left and then indicators over here on the right. Those will pop out for you as well. Now, I have a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to show it very quickly. And again, this is for my VantagePoint family members, but we always want you to know that we're here to support you as well. So once you become a VantagePoint family member, you are a VantagePoint family member for life. You're kind of stuck with us. But we like it that way. So if you are missing your indicator panel, just go ahead and click that indicator drop down up at the top navigation bar, and yours might say show indicators. If it says show indicators, just press that button and your indicator panel will reappear on its corresponding side. If you're missing your markets, well then just go to markets and do the same thing. Instead of hide markets, it should say show markets, and voila, now you have your markets and your indicator panels. All right, that's the side note, because knowing how to pull things onto the VantagePoint software is very, very important in order for you to manage that risk or pull up the markets that you want to assess as well. So thank you for that. But let's get into some sector rotation, because one of the key ways to diversify your portfolio and really help manage your risk and your exposure, maybe, that maybe you're heavily weighted in one area of the market. Just a quick kind of poll here, because I'm curious, who has like over 75% of their portfolio in just equities? Let me know in the chat. And I'm just kind of throwing out 75% because it's greater than 50, right? But not quite 100%. Maybe you're at 100% in equities. And those, I mean the individual assets, or maybe even the large cap stocks as well. Kind of ask yourself that question to see, as a check and balance for yourself, are you truly diversified when it comes to your trading? So let me know in the chat. I'd love to just kind of get a poll to see who's kind of more equity focused and who is actually dabbling in other areas of the market that can provide some really, really great opportunities, because we're going to get into that here in just a moment. So let's talk about some other areas of the market. You have things like commodities and the futures, of course, Forex as well. You've got ETFs also. Okay, so a lot of you are feeling not so diversified, and you may be feeling that probably this week, especially if you're heavy in one sector over the other. We know that tech has been hit a little bit hard here recently with some pullbacks and just overall market sentiment pushing up against those highs and that resistance. Now, that doesn't mean we're necessarily out of our bullish trend, but I'm sure that it would probably rest easier on you if you had a little bit more diversification and not kind of all of your eggs in one basket as well. So a great way to do that is to pull in some other types of assets. So we do have, again, things like commodities that you could look at as well. So I'm going to pull in just DJP here for a second. I'm going to put that on our medium term cross. And we can see we had a big downturn in this particular market here, but recently we've had some shorter term strength. So I'm going to just switch back over to that short term crossover and zoom on in so we can all get a good look at the potential here. And this is a commodities ETF that you can utilize. Now, of course, we've come through some support and resistance as well. But now when an asset likes to or tries to break resistance, if it can break through that resistance level, we oftentimes see a really nice breakout trend, especially in other areas of the market when the major markets aren't, or have some volatility. Maybe I'll just put it that way, right? So when we see we're up against resistance like this, if price can actually break through a resistance level, and this is why I mentioned earlier that you don't need to be afraid of resistance or support. You just need to know that it's there so you know how to overcome that obstacle. All right. So if you are expecting for an asset to overcome an obstacle like this, well then great. Just wait for those signals and those signs. Wait for the predictive information here in order to helpfully push through those different levels. And so we can see that our price action here, this is a predictive price, by the way, guys. You can see this is 821. And I hadn't mentioned this earlier, and I don't know why I waited so long to tell you this now, but in case you're not familiar with VantagePoint, you get your updates at 6:30 at night, the night before. So last night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, VantagePoint updated to provide these forecasts to our users. And so with this additional information, you can see increasing strength coming from some of these assets. And so this is, again, an ETF. So you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket. Who's familiar with ETFs? Let me know so that way we can see. All right. Sorry, just taking a second. Sometimes it takes me a moment to read through the chats, guys. I got to go back. You guys are, being great today. So I appreciate the feedback and the questions coming in. So as we can see, we're up against resistance here. If price is able to break, in fact, 2 closes above this resistance level. Now, that's not what's happened yet, right? I'm not saying that that has already occurred unless it did close one day, at least above today, right? So if we can get 1 and 2 closes above that resistance level, that could signify a potential breakout trend. Now, who wants to find breakouts in the market? I'm hoping everybody's raising their hand right now, right? Whether you type it in the chat or not, you certainly can find some really, really nice opportunities when you get a breakout through resistance. Now, again, a little higher risk until we get those 2 closes above resistance. So if you need to say it out loud 10 times, if you need to repeat after me, again, an official break of a resistance is signified by 2 consecutive closes. That's 2 days in a row. So when we get those 2 closes above that 1, 2, that could signify a potential breakout to the next level. And guess what? If we can close 1, 2 days above that, then we have another significant break where we can see this resistance level really, if we are able to break that level, then we have certainly a nice large runway to recover from. But this is a great way to diversify yourself as well. Now, oftentimes coming out of volatility like this, you'll see that breakout occur because prices got to move somewhere at some point, right? And how do you know when that's likely to occur? When we get nice strength coming from our indicators. This is another great way to showcase VantagePoint when you can see you are just sort of stuck within what we would call a channel between support and resistance. What way are we likely to break? Because at this point, you're at a crossroads. You're either going to break to the upside or break to the downside at some point. And you need to know when that's going to occur, right? And preferably you want to know before that happens, right? I hope. So when we see those predictive forecasts giving us a signal of a break for a potential upside move or downside move, then you can properly position yourself on the right side of that trend. So again, just showcasing some of the diversity here in VantagePoint from ETFs. Let's also take a look at some other ETFs here too. We'll even take a look at like XLK, right? And if you guys want to take a look at some additional markets, let me know here. XLK has been, again, on an incredible run here recently. I'm going to switch over to our most conservative view. This is a slightly different view than we've looked at thus far, because when you are looking at a longer term trend, oftentimes it's imperative to see the integrity of that trend. Are we still continuing with good bullish strength or upward strength? Or are we starting to lose that strength? Is it starting to dissipate to a point where you need to better assess the importance of remaining in that move, or whether or not it might be more advantageous to move to another sector or move to another market as a whole? And so XLK is a great way to, a great kind of example to showcase this, because XLK is that technology spider, right? It's a technology ETF. And so for those of you who are familiar with ETFs, you know that ETFs are a basket of stocks, really. It allows you to innately just sort of diversify without having to manage so many different markets, right? So instead of trading, 15, 20, 30 plus markets at a time, you can trade an ETF, which is that basket of equities or basket of stocks, if you will. So you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket, you're kind of just carrying the whole basket. So with the XLK, this is a ETF that follows primarily the technology stocks. So you have things like NVIDIA is a core holding here in XLK, right? You have other big tech companies in XLK. In fact, I'm just going to pull open XLK here so we can see. And I like to do this from time to time on our sessions, especially our lives, because it's important that everybody understands that not only are we looking at the market as a whole and what that predictive price action is expected to do, but that predictive price action has to come from somewhere. And actually, what we're doing is looking at the movers of that market. If you want to know where a car is headed, well, look at the drivers of that car, right? So XLK being our car in this case. And so you can see, this is our technology spider. This is sort of the parent market as I would consider it here within this grouping. So with the spider technology sector here, XLK, we can see the markets that are actually impacting XLK. And this is important because not only are we looking for markets that impact this market, XLK, but we're also behind the scenes as part of the artificial intelligence in VantagePoint and as part of the patented technology, we're also analyzing how these markets are driving the price action and the movement of XLK. And not just XLK, this is any market in VantagePoint. This is the powerful artificial intelligence that goes into all of the forecasts in VantagePoint for each asset individually. So we're analyzing those top markets that are impacting the market that maybe you're looking at or that you're trading to see how these additional inner markets or impacting markets are going to move or drive the price of that market that you're looking at. So this is just a little snapshot into what goes on behind the scenes. Of course, there is so much more that's just not even humanly possible because it's done with artificial intelligence and neural networks. But with innovative technology like this is where I say let the software do the work and you make the trade decisions. And this is where that marriage comes into play just so nicely and really gives you the confidence as a trader. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. We can certainly take a deeper dive into XLK. All right. Perfect. Let me just take a look. All right, thumbs up. Yes, familiar with ETFs. Okay, and for those of you who are not now, congratulations, you know what an ETF is. Like I said, these sessions are really designed to be very educational as well, not only just going through the charts and the forecast, but also making sure you guys have broader market knowledge that can help you make decisions as well. So as we see on our chart now. So let's jump back into the chart. We can see, boom, we've got a nice bullish move here. Why do we say bullish? Well, because it's green, right? And price is going up. And our triple cross is probably one of my favorite views. I like all of them. I shouldn't say I have a favorite, but I do like the triple cross because it gives you so much information. Also, if you are a little bit more conservative, you can also use the triple cross for great position management as well. And we even did a session recently on reversions to the mean, and the triple cross can help you with that also. So just kind of snippets, of what we do here on our sessions and even in our internal training sessions that we hold with our VantagePoint University as well. So you can see that the triple cross is continuing to the upside here. And we can see that we are remaining bullish this entire time. Now, I want to pay special attention to that triple cross or that T-cross long level here. Now, you can see that T-cross long level right here. At times, price comes down and actually touches this T-cross long level. And you'll notice that this oftentimes provides a level of support for price action. I just highlighted there where at points are triple cross or T-cross long level and support overlap, which tells us that that's a fairly strong support level as well. So now you have a predictive dynamic support level using that T-cross long. And so as long as price remains above, now remember we talked about that support and resistance and that close. How many days? How many days do we need above or below support or resistance in order to consider it a break of that level? I want to see who was paying attention, so let me know in the chat there. But as long as we're staying above that level, this provides that support or that confirmed bullish trend, that strong bullish trend. Now, there are some times where, the triple cross gets a little weak. And that means that the trend is actually seeing some weakness here. And that's when it turns from green to yellow. We love a good color coding system here, of course. So green is nice and strongly bullish. Yellow is going to be a little bit of caution, right? Kind of like a yellow light. Slow doesn't mean that we're, slamming on the gas, unless you're me. Just kidding. But it means you should start slowing. You should caution. There's a potential change happening. That's what that yellow light signals, that there is a potential change happening here. And so, of course, we do want to, be a little bit more cautious, but as long as, very good. All right. For those of you who typed in the chat, I just thank you. Thank you for that. And yes, you are correct. It's 2 days. So 2 days above or below a significant level will confirm that break. And so here, let's just take a look. Where'd my mouse go? There it is. All right. So we can see this is our first close below. Did we have a second confirmed close? And the answer is no, right? We can clearly see that the next day price action, reacted to that upward pressure, said, nope, too hot to handle, jumping back up above the triple cross, right? Back above that T-cross long line. And we can see the resumption of this bullish trend. That tells us right here that this support level is strong, the T-cross long level is strong, and the bullish trend is strong as well. Now, of course, we can see here as well that at this point, we also had a short-term crossover. I'm just going to bump on over to that view. You had a short-term crossover. Wow, let me clear some of my drawings off of there. That was fun. But we have that bullish crossover, the bounce off of the T-cross long, right? As well as your neural index is bullish. You've got your strength coming on up. And so if by chance you got stopped out here, right? And again, this is diversification because you're in many different areas of technology, all right? You're not just in one individual asset. You're not just in the large cap assets and technology. You've got several different assets that you're in, but you're only having to manage one position using the ETFs. You can kind of view it like that. So ETFs help you to diversify amongst the individual sectors, but also in other areas, as we talked about with the commodities as well. So from that risk management standpoint, right, as again, using those support and resistance levels, when should you be on higher alert? And when can those support and resistance levels, in fact, help you have more confidence in your potential entry as well? And of course, if we bounce off of support with strong support, we've got some headroom before we hit resistance again, then we can see that there is potential for this trend to really take off before hitting that obstacle of resistance. And of course, we hit that resistance level, right? Now, let's just take a look and see what happened here, right? I mean, this is why we call them pivot points, because you can see price action just kind of ping-ponging back and forth between these levels. So these pivots within the trend can happen if we don't have those two closes. So if you notice here, again, do we have the two closes, right? We try to hit that resistance level and we jump back down. So this is going to be that failure off of resistance. Again, do we have any sort of bullish strength? In fact, no. We have a lot of bearish movement coming from XLK. All right, so that's going to be an earlier warning sign. Now, guys, that was back on 8/15. Did any of our VantagePoint users, or in fact, even if you're not a VantagePoint user, were you able to see that resistance level? Did you sort of have confidence to better manage that position, or do you now, knowing that there's a resistance level that we bounced off of, right? Now, the next key piece here, and the reason I'm talking about the support and resistance and how many closes we would need is because we're up against a support level now. So will price be able to break this support level? That's the question, right? And this is, again, where you're sort of at that critical pivot point. If we start to see some renewed bullish strength, which we don't quite have yet, right? So a little premature to say we're going to bounce off of this, but it's also premature to say that we're going to break through it because we don't have those two confirmed closes below. We we would need the 2 confirmed closes below the support in order to signify the potential breakdown to these various support levels. All right. So these are sort of like checkpoints for price along the way. And so price will either be able to pass through that checkpoint or it won't. And depending upon how it reacts at these levels is really significantly going to help you better strategize on what is to come along with those predictive indicators, because you want to look at the shift in the predictive trend as well, coupled with those pivot points can really help guide you to a much more informed trade decision, and hopefully a more successful one as well. So we've talked about quite a few things today. Are there any other ticker symbols you guys want to pull up? Because we have about 10 minutes left. So let's just sort of open this up. We've talked about different sectors of the market. We've talked about different areas of the market, such as commodities, or even Forex markets as well. We could open that up for you so you can see we've got major pairs, minor pairs, major pairs. Does anybody trade Forex in the session? Let me know. Always love to hear from you guys and what you guys want to learn about. So give me some ticker symbols. And let's also take a look at maybe some other areas of the market as well. All right. Oh, there we go. Starting to come on in. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Cryptocurrencies. Thank you for bringing that up, John. Cryptocurrencies are another great area of the market. So let's go ahead and pull that up here. So we'll pull up Ethereum, USD, right? That is a cryptocurrency. That's going to be the Ethereum. Now it's going to be against the US dollar. That's just how currencies are traded, and cryptocurrencies are a part of that. Obviously a very different area of the market, but very similar to the currencies as well. It's going to be against another asset, which is the USD in this case. So thank you. All right, and PLTR, of course. I should have known, right? PLTR is like the new Tesla. I used to make sure I always had Tesla pulled up, but I should have had PLTR next time. I'll be sure to make that adjustment. But you guys asked, and here we are. So if you see, we do have Ethereum here currently, and we can see that we in fact had, I'll just switch this over to the more conservative view so you guys can see very quickly where we got a really nice strong bullish trend starting here. Right now, again, coming with confirmation, coming out of that consolidation, we didn't have clear signals happening here. You can see some things are up, some things are down. And that's where VantagePoint is so powerful, is navigating through kind of bad or marginal trades as well, because we don't have confirmation. You've got green, you've got red, you've got green, you've got red, right? Your predictive differences, your strength indicators are all sideways at this point, giving you signals that say, hey, you know what, we're in this support and resistance kind of chaos, if you will, right? This mess of support and resistance that's really causing this channel to wreak havoc on price. And we can see it just sort of flatlining here along with the predictive differences flatlining. Now, when do we get nice confirmation from everything? And that's really right around here where we see the predictive differences starting to trend up, along with that neural index, along with a crossover. So not only do we see the triple cross here, but if we switch on over to the medium term cross, we in fact have a medium term cross back here. But again, kind of monitoring through that resistance level here as well. It's not until we get those 2 closes above the resistance level, along with continued momentum or strength of the trend, that we really see this breakout start to occur. And I mean, thank you, John, for this chart, because I could not have picked a better one to show you guys the power of the breakout through a resistance or support level. And so here we have those 2 closes above, and boom, things just really take off from there. We're able to generate enough momentum to really continue on up. Now, a little bit of a pause here, and again, you can see that we're going to use the indicators the exact same way as we did on the stocks, to the ETFs, to the currencies as well, and even the cryptocurrencies. There's no change in the way that you're evaluating your chart. Now, depending upon the individual trader, your strategies might adjust slightly, but overall, your indicator assessment is going to remain the same. The indicator is going to give you the same information for a different chart or a different asset class, so you can really make an informed trade decision. So now we hit resistance, right? And we start to see some bearish expectation here. So, if you want to stay in through this riskier time, that's your prerogative, right? But we can see that we do have some bearish movement here. Not a crossover yet. You'll notice our crossover hasn't happened, right? But we do start to see some weakness along with the red neural index and those predictive differences coming down. So you as a trader, you might see that and say, wow, like I just had this great breakout. I'm going to get out, take profits, maybe put in tighter stops, maybe take a portion of your position and take those profits and let the rest ride out the trend, or put a stop on that, whatever your risk management protocol calls for at that point. But the key being is that you're at higher risk here because we're starting to see some weakness. Anytime we see weakness within a bear or a bullish trend, you know that there's some risk management that just needs to happen there. And so getting those signals earlier can help you to navigate through that scenario with a much clearer head, less emotion, because you certainly don't want to trade with emotions. And so, in fact, I was just talking to an economist the other day, and he said the hardest part about trading is just getting rid of the emotions, right? And so that's the hardest part. But the easiest way to do that is to look at the facts, is to look at the data, and that's what VantagePoint's providing here with the neural networks and the artificial intelligence. Is we're looking at that data behind the scenes, those market movers, those drivers of a particular asset, and yes, including Ethereum. In fact, I'll just show you guys right here. If we open up this, we can see here's Ethereum, and you've got that full market web of impacting markets on Ethereum itself. And, some of this is going to be treasury bonds, right? Some of these are going to be additional assets like the Qs. You've even got gold in here, but we do have some individual assets as well as other cryptocurrencies that are going to impact Ethereum also. So another great way to diversify when you're not quite sure what the equities are doing or if we're at all-time highs. You're not stuck to one particular asset class now because you just don't understand it. Now you know how to read the technical analysis, and you can just apply that to a different area of the market to ensure that you are diversified and you're managing your risk accordingly. So that's a great way to do that. So let's take a look. As we see, we do have some potential strength coming back in here. Now I say that because if we take a look down at your neural index, it is bullish here. We can see that green shading, and the shorter term indication is coming up. So we have a little bit of a mixed scenario happening here. And this is where I say, switch on over to that triple cross. Now, this is more of a strategic way to look at it. Look at one crossover, right? But then switch on over to another to see, is price at a key level? And lo and behold, right, we don't have support until way down here, but we are bumping right up against that T-cross long level. So this predictive longer term moving average, it's a predictive exponential moving average. So yes, that data from those market movers is already incorporated into that T-cross long, as well as all of the other blue line crossovers we looked at today. So if you can see here, we reverted all the way back down to that T-cross long level, and this is really just providing some support here as well. So hopefully that helps everybody with their assessment there on Ethereum. So thank you, John, again for that ticker symbol. Somebody asked for IWM, so I will go ahead and pull that up. That's going to be the Russells. These are going to be smaller cap stocks as well. You could also look up larger cap stocks on like the Diamonds or the Dow also. And so you can see that on the Russell, which is the IWM, we do have some expected bearishness as well. So let's go ahead and move on over to the triple cross. So again, kind of looking at that crossroads on when we're coming up against a key level, depending upon what price does at this level. Is it going to renew its bullish strength and come on up? Or are we going to continue on down further? Now, if we continue on down further, we can see that we do have forecast of sort of some, weakness here. So we want to be careful at that point, again, at that crossroads. So depending upon where, IWM closed out today, let's take a look at that. In fact, I'll just pull that up. We can just look that up very quickly and see. So Russell ended at 225.97. So 225.97 would put us right around here. So again, here's another indicator that we haven't mentioned yet, and we only have just a few moments left, so I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you guys can see this predictive trade candle. All right, this predictive trade candle, in fact, gives you the predictive high and predictive low for the next trade day. So the bottom of that candle is going to be the predictive low at 224.06, and the top of that candle is the predictive high at 227.27. You can see that information right on up here if you're wondering where I got those values from. So just put the crosshairs there and the values are there for you. So with that information, you can then also plan out your trade day as well, plan your entries, plan your exits based on the predictive data on where we expect this range to be for today. And so we can see on the Russell that in fact, our day's range was 223 to 226. And wow, I mean, we pretty much so within less than $1 of the predicted low, we hit that spot on. And I mean, this is just a true testament to the power of the artificial intelligence here in VantagePoint and what it's doing behind the scenes to give you this data ahead of time. So we weren't expecting to break below that triple cross, that T cross long level. In fact, we were expecting to see some potential bullishness for today based off of that predictive trade candle as well. And this is why these key levels, and when we start to see shifts rather than strength, can really help you to plan and strategize your trade day moving forward. So regardless of what asset class you're trading, whether it's the individual equities, or maybe you do want to diversify into other asset classes as well. Maybe you want to stick with equities because that's what you're familiar with, but you just need to know how to better diversify. ETFs are another great option as well. And again, forecasted all by VantagePoint here using that powerful predictive data so you can, rid yourself of the emotions and trade based on the facts so you can have a more strategic and hopefully more successful trade strategy as well. So again, whether you're looking to diversify or better manage your risk, VantagePoint can certainly help you in any area. So I hope today's session was just very educational and informative, whether you're a VantagePoint family member or not. Go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. We try to do as much education for traders out there as possible. So we hope you enjoyed the session, and I will see you guys on our next one. So have a fantastic rest of your day.